modifying type using a bounding box in Photoshop. What is a bounding box? When I go to the Move tool, select my Move tool up here in the Tools panel, and I have the check mark next to Show Transform Controls on the options bar, I will see my bounding box. So the bounding box is really this rectangle that surrounds the type, and it contains these little handles. We can use the bounding box to control the size and proportion of existing type. So, like I mentioned, you use the Move tool, check the Show Transform Controls up here in the options bar, make sure that your type layer is the active selected layer, and then change the bounding box by positioning the pointer over a handle on the bounding box. You can see that my cursor does change. I get different transform pointers as I move my cursor around the bounding box. So the easiest is just drag until you see the size that you want. You can hold down the Shift key, like I'm doing right now, when resizing it to prevent any kind of distortion of the type. So this constrains the proportion that Shift typically does with any of the tools in the Adobe products. So some of the pointers that you can get utilizing the bounding box. We have a diagonal pointer. When I go to a corner here, you can see a diagonal pointer, and this just resizes it. I can drag to the upper right, the lower left, handles, doesn't matter, and I can just click and drag to resize it. You can see it's very organic. I am destroying the original font's characteristics. However, I'm able to achieve some really interesting effects and sizes this way. All right, so I get that depending on what corner I'm at. Up here at the top, it's a diagonal at the other direction. If I drag the middle handles here, either on the horizontal or the vertical, I can resize in just that axis. So here I can go just on the vertical axis, and here I can go just on the horizontal, and it's on either side, same thing. If I go to a corner here and drag just slightly out away from the bounding box corner, I get a curve, and this appears to allow me to rotate. So now I can rotate. And of course, it's all anchored about the center point. This is that point of origin, or the reference point, and this is the location from which all of the distortions or the transformations are measured from. And so it's my center point, it's my anchor point. So you can see that as I rotate, it's rotating about that point. All right, and now if I press and drag my Command or my Control key, I get a white pointer, and this allows me to skew. So Control or Command, and you can see that I can do some interesting things. Now I can pop it on one of the axes and I can skew it, and you can see it's bouncing between vertical and horizontal. So interesting things that I can do here as far as skewing it, and it all depends on where you drag. The key here is just to drag a little bit. Don't go crazy and drag really fast, because it's hard to control those transformations. Now whenever I do a transformation, I have to commit to it with the check mark up here, or I can not commit or cancel that transform. I can also commit by just pressing Enter or Return. I do have some transforms that I can do to help set an overall style, and I can go up to my Edit and Transform. So again, distort and perspective, not highlighted. They're not an option because I have to rasterize this first. So I can choose any of these, and same kind of thing. I get the bounding box. It's exactly the same as what I see when I have the Move tool and check that Transform Controls. Remember, with all of these, holding Shift maintains the scale. One more note about that reference point. While I'm here, I can choose to move it by clicking and dragging. I can relocate the point at which the transformations occur. So if I say I go right here at the top of the T and that arm of the T, and I'm in a scale right now, let's go ahead and do this with the rotate. So whether I go to my move tool, show transform controls, and do it from here, or go under edit and transform and choose from here, it's really the same thing. So let's go ahead and move this over to the corner. And now you can see I only have my rotate cursor because I specifically said under edit, transform, rotate. Okay, so if I rotate now, you can see how it's rotating about that point. So it's as though you stuck a pin right here. This is a piece of paper, you pinned it, and now you're moving it around and it's stuck or anchored at that point. Okay, so a lot of really cool things you can do as far as transforming. I can click OK. One more item I can do, Control T. Control or Command T. What that will do is take me into the free transform. And that really is essentially what happens when, again, I'm at the move tool and I show transform controls. The free transform allows me to do all of those transformations really at one time. So I can rotate, I can scale, I can skew, I can do all of those items at one point. So go ahead and play with the bounding box and the transformations that you can do. I always say some of those really kind of generic fonts, it's okay to really mess with, but some of those really classic fonts, things like Helvetica or Garamond or Palatino, some of those Bodoni, they are classics. It's like taking the Mona Lisa and trying to fix it up by painting over top of it. You don't want to do that. So some of those classics, I say the fonts that you have to pay for are worth it, so don't destroy them. Fonts that you get for free, go ahead and play with and distort, do a lot of fun things with them. So kind of an underlying rule in graphic design to respect those really high-class fonts, play with all of the rest.